The house was empty, completely empty. When Marcus Chen turned his key in the lock and pushed open the front door of his 6,500 square foot mansion, he expected to find his wife waiting for him. Maybe angry, maybe hurt, maybe even relieved that he was finally home from his 2-week vacation in Hawaii. What he found instead was nothing. Literally nothing. The marble floors echoed under his footsteps as he walked through the foyer. The chandelier that had cost $40,000 was gone. The Italian leather furniture from the living room had vanished. The custom curtains his wife Becca had spent months choosing were missing. Even the curtain rods had been removed from the walls. Marcus dropped his suitcase and ran through the house. Kitchen, empty. The Viking range, gone. The refrigerator, gone. Even the granite countertops had been torn out, leaving exposed cabinets. Bedroom, the king-size bed had disappeared. His clothes remained, neatly folded in stacks on the floor where the dresser used to be. But her closet was completely bare except for one item hanging alone in the vast empty space. A red dress. The red dress she had worn to their anniversary dinner 3 months ago. The dress he barely glanced at before bringing his colleague Jennifer home to discuss a work project. Marcus walked to the dress with trembling hands and touched the fabric. Pinned to it was a small piece of paper, a receipt. His eyes scanned the details and his blood ran cold. The receipt was from a pawn shop. It showed that Becca had sold her grandmother's ring, a $15,000 family heirloom, for $400. The date on the receipt was the same day as their anniversary dinner. She had sold her most precious possession to buy a dress to make him notice her. And he hadn't even looked up from his phone. Marcus stumbled backward and caught himself against the wall. That's when he saw it. On the floor in the center of the empty bedroom was a single photograph. Their wedding photo. In the picture, Marcus and Becca were young, smiling, radiant with hope. But someone had taken a black marker and scratched out Marcus's face so violently that the paper had torn. He picked up the photo with shaking hands, and that's when he noticed the envelope underneath. It was addressed to him in Becca's handwriting. The envelope he had shoved in his carry-on bag 2 weeks ago when she begged him to read it on the plane. The letter he never opened. Let me take you back to the beginning, to show you how Marcus Chen became the kind of man who could lose everything without even noticing it was slipping away. Marcus was 38 years old, and on paper, his life was perfect. He was senior vice president at CloudNext Solutions, a tech company he had helped build from the ground up. He made $450,000 a year. He wore custom-tailored suits that cost more than most people's monthly rent. He drove a Tesla Model S with a license plate that read, "Earned it," because he wanted everyone to know that his success wasn't handed to him. Marcus had grown up poor, the son of a single mother who worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table. He had watched his mother's hands crack and bleed from cleaning houses. He had worn second-hand clothes to school and endured the mockery of richer kids. He had promised himself that he would never be poor again, that he would achieve so much success that no one could ever look down on him. And he had kept that promise. By the time he was 30, Marcus owned his own home. By 35, he was a millionaire. By 38, he had everything he had ever dreamed of. Except he had forgotten one crucial thing. He had forgotten that dreams aren't just about what you gain. They're also about what you're willing to lose to get there. Marcus met Rebecca Martinez when he was 26 years old. She was 23, a pediatric nurse with kind eyes and a smile that made him feel like maybe the world wasn't such a harsh place after all. They met at a bookstore cafe, both reaching for the same book on the discount table. "You can have it," Becca had said, pulling her hand back. But Marcus had smiled and said, "How about we share it? I'll buy the book, you buy the coffee, and we can talk about it." They talked for 4 hours that day. Becca told him about her dreams of opening a free clinic for underprivileged children. Marcus told her about his plans to build a tech empire. She didn't laugh at his ambitions even though he was just a junior developer at the time. She believed in him. That was the thing about Becca. She had this way of making people feel seen, feel possible, feel worthy. When Marcus picked her up for their first official date, he brought sunflowers. "Why sunflowers?" she had asked. "Because you told me they're your favorite," Marcus replied. "You said they always turn toward the sun, always looking for light. You said that's how you try to live your life. Becca's eyes had filled with tears. You remembered. Of course I remembered, Marcus said. I remember everything about you. They got married 2 years later in a small ceremony in Becca's parents' backyard. Marcus wore a suit he had saved for 3 months to buy. Becca wore her mother's wedding dress, altered to fit her smaller frame. When they exchanged vows, Marcus promised to choose her every single day. Becca promised to be his light when the world felt dark. And for the first few years, Marcus kept his promise. He came home for dinner every night. He remembered her birthday, their anniversary, the little things that mattered. When Becca had a hard day at the hospital, Marcus would draw her a bath and sit with her, listening to her stories about the children she cared for. When Marcus felt overwhelmed by the pressure of building his career, Becca would hold him and remind him that his worth wasn't measured by his paycheck. They were partners. They were a team. They were happy. But then something shifted. Marcus got his first major promotion. Suddenly, he was managing a team of 20 people. The hours got longer. The pressure got heavier. The stakes got higher. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, Marcus started choosing work over Becca. First, it was small things. He missed one dinner because of a late meeting. Then 2 dinners. Then entire weeks would go by where they barely saw each other awake. Becca tried to be understanding. She knew Marcus was working hard for their future. She knew he carried the weight of his childhood poverty like a stone in his chest, always afraid it would come back if he didn't stay vigilant. So she adjusted. She stopped making elaborate dinners because they always went cold. She stopped planning date nights because Marcus always canceled. She stopped sharing stories from her day because Marcus was always on his phone. His eyes glazed over with distraction. 3 years into Marcus's climb up the corporate ladder, Becca quit her job as a nurse. Marcus had suggested it during one of their rare conversations. You don't need to work, he had said. I make enough for both of us. Why don't you take some time off, relax? Maybe we can start thinking about a family. Becca had hesitated. She loved nursing. She loved the children, the purpose, the feeling of making a difference. But Marcus seemed so earnest, so hopeful about starting a family. So she agreed. She quit her job and waited for the family they would start together. But Marcus was always too busy, too tired, too stressed. The conversation about children never happened again. And Becca found herself alone in their increasingly large house, with nothing to do but wait for a husband who was never home. The mansion they lived in now was in Willowbrook Estates, a gated community where the neighbors drove Range Rovers and hired gardeners to maintain their perfect lawns. The house had 6 bedrooms, even though it was just the 2 of them. It had a wine cellar that Marcus had stocked with bottles he never drank. It had a home theater where they never watched movies together. It had an infinity pool with Mediterranean blue tiles that Becca had chosen, thinking maybe they could spend summer evenings swimming together like they used to at the community pool when they were young and poor and happy. But Marcus never swam. He was always working. Becca tried to fill her days. She volunteered at the children's hospital every Tuesday, though she never told Marcus about it because he never asked how she spent her time. She tended to her garden, planting 12 rose bushes, 1 for each year of their marriage. She taught herself to cook elaborate meals from scratch, following her grandmother's old recipes, hoping that maybe the smell of homemade tamales or fresh-baked bread would lure Marcus away from his laptop. But nothing worked. Marcus was disappearing, not physically, but emotionally. He was becoming a stranger who shared her address but not her life. The breaking point started small, like most breaking points do. It was their 12th wedding anniversary. Becca had planned for weeks. She made reservations at Osteria Mazza, the restaurant where Marcus had proposed to her 12 years earlier. She bought a new dress, the red one, using money from pawning her grandmother's ring because she had no income of her own anymore. She spent 6 hours preparing ossobuco, Marcus's favorite meal, just in case he wanted to stay home instead. She set the table with their wedding china, the delicate pieces they had received as gifts and never used because Marcus said they were too fancy for every day. She lit exactly 12 candles, 1 for each year of marriage. And she waited. Marcus came home 3 hours late. Becca heard his car in the driveway and felt a flutter of hope. Maybe he remembered. Maybe he had flowers. Maybe he had a gift. But when the door opened, Marcus wasn't alone. He had brought Jennifer, his 26-year-old colleague, to discuss a project. "We'll just be an hour," Marcus said, barely glancing at Becca. "We're on a deadline." Jennifer looked uncomfortable, her eyes taking in the romantic table setting, the candles, the beautiful meal. "Maybe I should go," Jennifer said quietly. "We can meet tomorrow." "Nonsense," Marcus said, already pulling out his laptop. "We're here now. Might as well work." Becca stood in the kitchen doorway, still wearing the red dress, watching her husband choose a work meeting over their anniversary. She didn't say anything. What was there to say? She had already said it all. She had asked him to prioritize their marriage. She had begged him to come to counseling. She had cried and pleaded and tried everything she could think of. But Marcus always had the same response: "I'm doing this for us." As if neglect could somehow be disguised as love if you were working hard enough. Becca quietly retreated to their bedroom. She sat in the walk-in closet, still wearing the red dress, and cried silently so Marcus wouldn't hear. At some point, she fell asleep there, curled up on the floor among her shoes. Marcus never came looking for her. The next morning, Marcus found Becca in the kitchen, already dressed, her face carefully neutral. "Sorry about last night," he said, pouring coffee. "The presentation is just really important." Becca looked at him for a long moment. "Do you know what yesterday was?" Marcus frowned, trying to remember if it was someone's birthday, some work deadline he had forgotten. "Our anniversary," Becca said quietly. 12 years. I made your favorite dinner. I made reservations at the place you proposed. I wore a new dress." Marcus felt a flash of guilt, but it was immediately buried under defensiveness. "I said I was sorry. I can't control when urgent work comes up." "You could have said no," Becca replied. "You could have told Jennifer it had to wait one day. You could have chosen me." "I'm choosing us," Marcus snapped. "Do you think this house pays for itself? Do you think your comfortable life just happens?" And there it was, the thing Marcus always fell back on. Money. As if the size of their house could somehow compensate for the emptiness inside it. Becca didn't argue. She just turned and walked away. And Marcus let her go because he had emails to answer. 3 months passed. 3 months of near silence. They moved around each other like ghosts, occupying the same space but existing in different worlds. Becca's 35th birthday came and went. Marcus forgot it entirely. Becca baked herself a German chocolate cake, Marcus's favorite, not hers, because even in her loneliness, she was still trying to please him. She left a slice on the counter with a single candle, hoping Marcus would notice and remember. He came home at 2 in the morning, saw the cake, assumed it was old, and threw it away. The next morning, Becca saw the empty cake stand in the trash and something inside her quietly broke. She started planning then, not consciously at first, but in the back of her mind, she began to imagine a life without Marcus. What would it look like? Where would she go? Could she survive alone? But there was something else Becca was dealing with, something she had tried 17 times to tell Marcus. She was sick. It had started with headaches, the kind that made light feel like daggers in her eyes. Then came the dizziness, the moments where the world would tilt and blur. Becca had gone to the doctor alone, of course. Marcus was too busy to go with her. The doctor ordered an MRI. The MRI showed a meningioma, a tumor growing on the membranes surrounding her brain. "It's likely benign," the doctor said, "but it needs to come out. The surgery is complex. There's a 15% chance of complications, stroke, paralysis, or in rare cases, death. But if we don't remove it, it will keep growing." Becca sat in the doctor's office, alone, and listened to him explain how they would cut into her skull. She scheduled the surgery for 3 months away, hoping that would give her enough time to tell Marcus. But every time she tried, something got in the way. The first time she tried to tell him, Marcus was practicing a presentation in the mirror. "Marcus, I need to talk to you," Becca began. "Hold that thought," Marcus said, not looking at her. "I'm almost done with this section." He never asked her to continue. The second time, they were having dinner, a rare occurrence. I went to the doctor yesterday, Becca said. Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. Is everything okay? He asked absently. Actually, Becca started. But Marcus was already reading the email, his attention completely gone. Sorry, this is urgent, he said, standing up. We'll talk later. Later never came. 17 times, Becca tried to tell him. 17 times something was more important. And slowly, Becca realized the truth. She was going to face this surgery alone, just like she faced everything else alone. The knowledge didn't make her angry anymore. It made her sad. And then it made her determined. If she was going to be alone anyway, she might as well be alone on her own terms. Then came Marcus's promotion. Senior vice president with a corner office and a $150,000 raise. The company threw a party at an exclusive club downtown. Marcus forgot to tell Becca about it. She only found out when his mother called asking what Becca was planning to wear. Becca showed up in jeans and a sweater, walking into a room full of people in cocktail attire. She stood near the door, feeling every eye on her, feeling the humiliation burn through her chest. And then Jennifer gave a toast. To Marcus, Jennifer said, raising her glass. Thank you for all the late nights together. We couldn't have done this without your dedication. The way she said it, the emphasis on together, the slight smile, made everyone in the room uncomfortable. Becca didn't know if there was something between Marcus and Jennifer. She didn't even care anymore. The pain of wondering was less than the pain of knowing Marcus wouldn't choose her either way. Becca left the party without saying goodbye. Marcus didn't notice she was gone for 2 hours. That night, Becca made a decision. She sat Marcus down in their living room and asked him directly, "Do you even love me anymore?" Marcus looked offended. "Of course I do. Why would you ask that?" "When is my birthday?" Becca asked calmly. Marcus hesitated. "That's not fair. I'm bad with dates." "What's my favorite color?" "Blue," Marcus guessed. "It's yellow," Becca said. "Like the sunflowers you brought me on our first date. I've told you 100 times. We painted the guest room yellow. I wear yellow constantly, but you've never noticed." "This is ridiculous," Marcus said, his defensiveness rising. "I work 80 hours a week to give you this life. What's my middle name?" Becca interrupted. Marcus stared at her. The silence stretched between them. "It's Maria," Becca finally said. "After my grandmother, who died 3 months ago. I told you. You said, okay, and went back to your laptop. You didn't come to the funeral because you had a meeting." Marcus felt something crack inside his chest, but he pushed it down. He couldn't be the bad guy. He refused to be the bad guy. He was working hard, providing, doing everything right. How dare Becca make him feel guilty for his success? And that's when Marcus made the worst decision of his life. His company offered him a spot at a leadership retreat in Hawaii. 2 weeks of seminars, networking, and team building at a luxury resort. Usually, spouses were invited. But Marcus decided he would go alone. He decided that Becca needed to see what life was like without him. Maybe then she would appreciate everything he did. Maybe then she would stop complaining. The morning Marcus left for Hawaii, Becca made his favorite breakfast even though he never ate breakfast. She packed his favorite snacks for the plane. And she handed him a sealed envelope. "Please read this on the plane," she said quietly. "It's important." "I'll read it later," Marcus said, distracted by his phone. "Marcus, please," Becca's voice cracked. "Just this once. Please listen to me." But Marcus was annoyed now. "I have a flight to catch, Becca. Whatever it is can wait 2 weeks. He threw the envelope in his carry-on bag and left. And as the Uber pulled away from their house, Marcus pulled out his phone and blocked Becca's number. 2 weeks of peace, he thought. Maybe that will teach her to appreciate me. Marcus had no idea he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He had no idea that the envelope contained a letter explaining that Becca was scheduled for brain surgery while he was gone. He had no idea that Becca had been trying to tell him for months that she might die. And he had no idea that when he came home in 2 weeks, Becca would be gone. Not dead, but gone in a way that was somehow worse. She would have erased herself from his life as completely as he had erased her from his attention. The Hawaii retreat was everything Marcus thought he wanted. The resort was stunning, 5 stars with ocean views and infinity pools. The seminars were engaging. The networking dinners were productive. And for the first time in months, Marcus felt free. No guilt, no wife asking for attention, no emotional demands. Just work, success, and validation. Jennifer was at the retreat too. She sat next to Marcus during seminars. They had drinks together at sunset. She laughed at his jokes and touched his arm and said things like, "Your wife doesn't understand the pressure you're under." And Marcus felt seen. He felt appreciated. He felt like maybe he wasn't the villain Becca was making him out to be. On the 7th night, Marcus and Jennifer walked along the beach after dinner. The moon was full. The waves were gentle. And Jennifer turned to him with soft eyes and said, "You deserve someone who supports your ambitions." She leaned in to kiss him, and Marcus almost let her. At the last second, he pulled back. Not because of love for Becca, not because of his wedding vows, but because he suddenly thought, this is exactly what Becca thinks I'm doing. If I do this, she'll be right about me. It was the first moment of real clarity Marcus had in years. But instead of using that clarity to examine his choices, to call Becca and apologize, to fly home early and save his marriage, Marcus pushed it down. He told Jennifer he was flattered but couldn't. She smiled sadly and walked away, and Marcus went back to his room and tried to forget the whole thing. The envelope with Becca's letter sat in his suitcase, unopened. Every night, Marcus thought about reading it. Every night, he found an excuse not to. After this drink. After this swim. Tomorrow. Tomorrow never came. On the 9th day of the retreat, Marcus had a nightmare. He dreamed he came home to an empty house. He dreamed Becca was standing in the living room, trying to speak, but no sound came out. He woke up at 3 in the morning in a cold sweat, his heart pounding. He tried to call Becca, forgetting he had blocked her number. When he unblocked it and called, it went straight to voicemail. Her phone was off. "Hey, it's me," Marcus said, his voice uncertain. "Just checking in. Call me back." She never did. On the 11th day, Marcus got a call from an unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Where the hell are you?" It was Sophie, Becca's best friend. "Hawaii," Marcus said, confused. "Why? You need to come home. Now." Sophie's voice was shaking. "What's wrong? Is Becca okay?" Marcus asked, real fear creeping in. "I can't. Just come home, Marcus." Sophie hung up. Marcus booked the first flight out. On the plane, somewhere over the Pacific Ocean, he finally opened Becca's letter. And as he read, Marcus felt his entire world collapse. The letter explained everything. The tumor, the surgery scheduled for next week, the 17 times Becca tried to tell him, the way she had been facing her possible death completely alone. The letter explained that Becca wasn't leaving to punish him, but because she finally understood that she was invisible to him. And if she was going to be alone anyway, she might as well be alone on her own terms. The letter ended with a postscript that destroyed Marcus. Becca had sold her grandmother's ring, her most precious possession, to buy a dress to make him notice her. And he hadn't even looked up from his phone. Marcus cried on that plane. He cried so hard that the flight attendant asked if he was okay. He wasn't okay. He would never be okay again. When Marcus finally got home and saw the empty house, saw the wedding photo with his face scratched out, saw the red dress hanging alone in the closet, he fell to his knees and sobbed. Everything was gone. The furniture, the appliances, even the light fixtures. Becca had erased every trace of herself from their home. The only things she left were symbols of pain. The broken wedding china arranged in a circle on the kitchen floor. The receipt showing she sold her grandmother's ring for almost nothing. The garden outside with 12 rose bushes, the 12th one dead and wilted with a tag that read, "This one couldn't survive neglect." Marcus called Sophie. "Where is she?" he demanded. "You have some nerve," Sophie said coldly. "Please, I need to know she's okay." "Now you care? After you blocked her for 2 weeks. I know I messed up, but the letter said she's sick." "She has a brain tumor," Sophie said. "Surgery is next week. And no, I won't tell you where." Sophie, please. She spent 3 months trying to tell you. Why should she let you back in now? Sophie hung up. Marcus called Becca's parents. Her father Roberto answered and immediately hung up when he heard Marcus's voice. Marcus tried the hospital, but they wouldn't confirm if Becca was a patient. He hired a private investigator. The investigator traced Becca to a bus station where she had paid cash for a ticket. Destination unknown. She had sold her car, emptied her bank accounts, canceled her credit cards, and disconnected her phone. Becca had disappeared completely. Marcus stopped going to work. He stopped showering. He sat in the empty house and read Becca's journal, which he found hidden in the attic. 3 years of entries. 3 years of Becca slowly disappearing, trying to make herself smaller, trying to earn love from a man who had forgotten how to give it. The journal entries broke Marcus's heart. Year 1. Marcus worked late again. I made his favorite dinner. He didn't notice. Tomorrow I'll try harder. Year 2. I think I'm losing myself. I don't recognize the woman in the mirror. She's quiet. She's small. She's disappearing. Is this what marriage is? Year 3. Dr. Patterson says the tumor is operable but risky. 15% chance of complications. I should tell Marcus, but he's practicing his presentation. I'll tell him tomorrow. There were 35 entries that said, I'll tell him tomorrow. Tomorrow never came. The final entry was dated the day before Marcus left for Hawaii. I'm done waiting for him to see me. I'm done shrinking. Tomorrow I choose myself. If the surgery takes me, at least I'll die having finally lived. Marcus read that line over and over until the words blurred through his tears. When his boss called about missed deadlines, Marcus said, I don't care. When his boss said he'd lose his promotion, Marcus said, I already lost everything that mattered. He got fired. Marcus didn't care. What was a job compared to losing Becca? Marcus became obsessed with finding her. He remembered that Becca's grandmother used to own a restaurant in Boyle Heights. He drove there, desperate for any clue. The building was abandoned, but there were fresh flowers on the doorstep. Someone had been there recently. Then Marcus remembered something Sophie had mentioned months ago, that Becca volunteered somewhere. He checked Becca's calendar and found it, St. Mary's Tuesdays. He went to St. Mary's Children's Hospital and asked about Becca. A nurse recognized him. You're Rebecca's husband? She asked. Yes. Is she here? Marcus's heart raced. She hasn't been here in a month. Since she got sick. The nurse hesitated, then added, She talked about you sometimes. She said you were brilliant and driven. She said she understood why you worked so hard, even when it hurt. She said she hoped you'd be happy, even if it wasn't with her. Marcus broke down crying in the hospital hallway. This nurse, a stranger, knew more about Becca's feelings than he did. Finally, desperate, Marcus went to Becca's parents' house. Roberto answered the door and tried to slam it in Marcus's face. But Carmen, Becca's mother, stopped him. Let him in, she said quietly. They sat in the living room surrounded by photos of Becca as a child. Carmen looked at Marcus with sad eyes. She's my only daughter. I watched you kill her spirit piece by piece. I never wanted to hurt her, Marcus said. Neglect is hurt, Marcus. Silence is hurt. Absence is hurt. Where is she? Please, I need to make this right. Carmen's eyes filled with tears. Make it right? She's having brain surgery in 3 days. Alone. Because you taught her she had to be. Which hospital? Please, Marcus begged. Roberto stood up. No, you lost that privilege. But Carmen, torn between protecting her daughter and seeing the genuine anguish in Marcus's eyes, whispered, St. Catherine's, Thursday, 6 a.m. Carmen, no. Roberto protested. She still loves him, Roberto, Carmen said softly. I saw it when she said goodbye. She still loves him, even though she shouldn't. Marcus drove 2 hours to St. Catherine's Hospital and waited in the parking lot. He waited for 18 hours straight, not eating, not sleeping, just watching every person who entered and exited. The day before the surgery, Sophie appeared in the parking lot. She doesn't want to see you, Sophie said. I know, but I need to see her. Even if she hates me, even if she tells me to leave, I need to tell her I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix 3 years, Sophie said. I know, but it's a start. Sophie studied his face for a long moment. Finally, she said, Room 412. But Marcus, if you hurt her again, I'll destroy you myself. Marcus stood outside room 412 for 10 minutes, his hand on the doorknob, unable to breathe. He could hear Becca's voice inside, talking to a nurse. No emergency contact. I'll be fine alone. Those words shattered Marcus. He opened the door. Becca was sitting in the hospital bed, thinner than he remembered, with dark circles under her eyes. But she was still beautiful. When she saw him, her face went blank. How did you find me? She asked, her voice carefully neutral. I read your letter, Marcus said. Took you long enough. I know I'm late. I'm always late. But I'm here now. You're 2 weeks late. You're 3 months late. You're 3 years late, Becca said, her voice breaking. I'm sorry. I don't want your apology, Marcus. I want my life back. And I can't get it back from you. Marcus sank to the floor, unable to stand under the weight of his guilt. You're right. About everything. I blocked you. I chose work. I made you invisible. I read your journal, all of it. 35 times you tried to tell me about the tumor. I was there, but I wasn't present. I was your husband, but I wasn't your partner. I loved you, but I didn't show it. And that's the same as not loving you at all. Becca's eyes filled with tears. Why now? Why do you care now? Because I lost you, and I realized you were never the problem. I was. They talked for hours. Marcus confessed everything, even the almost kiss with Jennifer in Hawaii. Becca flinched at that, but Marcus continued. I stopped. Not because of morals, but because I realized even with her attention, I felt empty. Because it wasn't you. That's not romantic, Marcus, Becca said. That's just guilt. You're right, Marcus admitted. But it woke me up. Becca started crying. Do you know what the worst part was? Not the neglect. Not the loneliness. Not even thinking I might die alone. The worst part was that I still loved you through all of it. And I hated myself for it. I hated that I could be so smart, so strong, so capable, and still break myself trying to earn love from someone who forgot how to give it. A doctor entered to prep Becca for surgery. Mrs. Chen, we need to get you ready. Surgery is in 12 hours. He looked at Marcus. Are you the husband? Becca said quickly. No. He's no one. Marcus felt the words like a knife. I'm no one, he repeated quietly. After the doctor left, Marcus made one last plea. Let me stay, please. Let me be here for the surgery. Why? Becca asked. Because even if you never forgive me, even if this is the last time I see you, I need you to know you don't have to face this alone. I've been facing everything alone, Becca said bitterly. I know, and I can't change that. But maybe, just for tomorrow, you don't have to. Becca looked at him for a long time. Finally, she said, You can stay in the waiting room, not because I forgive you, but because I don't want to die knowing I sent you away. You're not going to die, Marcus said. 15% chance of complications. Stroke, paralysis, or worse. I've made peace with it. I haven't, Marcus said. That's not my problem anymore, Marcus, Becca replied. The next morning at 6 a.m., they took Becca into surgery. Marcus sat in the waiting room, unable to move. Sophie arrived and sat across from him without speaking. Becca's parents came and wouldn't look at him. At 8 a.m., there was still no update. At 10 a.m., Marcus still hadn't moved. Carmen brought him coffee. This doesn't mean anything, she said. I know, Marcus replied. Thank you. At 11:30, the doctor emerged, his face serious. Everyone stood. There was a complication during surgery, he began. Sophie gasped. Marcus felt the room spin. We had to extend the procedure. More bleeding than expected. But we got the tumor. All of it. Everyone exhaled. But she's not awake yet. Sometimes the anesthesia takes longer. Could be hours. Could be days. Marcus refused to leave. The hospital said only family was allowed in ICU. Roberto said firmly, "He's not family." But Carmen put her hand on her husband's arm. "Roberto, he's still her husband. In name only." Roberto spat. Marcus stepped forward. "He's right. I haven't earned the title. But please let me see her once. Just once." Roberto stared at him, then finally nodded. 5 minutes. Marcus entered the ICU room and saw Becca surrounded by tubes and machines, her head bandaged, looking small and fragile in the hospital bed. He took her hand and said, "I'm here, Becca. I'm not leaving. Not this time." The machines beeped steadily. There was no response. Marcus, thinking she couldn't hear him, began to speak from his heart. "I don't know if you can hear me. They say maybe you can. I rehearsed this, a whole speech about how I'd change, how I'd be better. But that's not fair to you. You've heard promises before. So instead, I'm just going to tell you the truth. I was afraid. Afraid of intimacy. Afraid of vulnerability. Afraid of being the man my father was, present but absent. So I hid in work, in achievements, in anything that felt safe. But you were never safe, Becca. You were terrifying because you saw me, the real me, and I was scared you'd realize I wasn't worth seeing. So I disappeared before you could leave me first. I'm a coward. I'm broken. And I don't deserve your forgiveness. But Becca, if you wake up, when you wake up, I promise I'll spend the rest of my life proving that I can be the man you married. The one who brought sunflowers, the one who promised to choose you every day. I won't ask you to take me back. But please just wake up. Wake up and live the life you deserve, even if it's not with me." Marcus turned to leave, his 5 minutes up. That's when he heard it. Faint, barely there. "Marcus." He spun around. Becca's eyes were open, just barely. "You stayed," she whispered. "I stayed," Marcus said, tears streaming down his face. "Why?" "Because you're my everything. And I forgot. But I remember now." Becca's eyes closed again, exhausted, but she was smiling, the smallest smile, and she squeezed his hand once. Marcus called for the doctor, and within minutes the room filled with medical staff. Becca was awake. She was going to be okay. The recovery took months. Marcus stayed by her side every single day. He slept in the hospital chair. He learned her medication schedule. He helped her walk the hallways. He read poetry to her and discovered she loved Pablo Neruda, something he never knew. When Becca was discharged, she moved into a small apartment Sophie had found. She refused to go back to the mansion. That house was a tomb, she said. Marcus didn't argue. He respected her boundaries. He sold the mansion and bought a modest condo. He donated most of the furniture. The only thing he kept was the wedding china, broken but carefully glued back together. Symbolic. Marcus started therapy twice a week to address his workaholism and fear of intimacy. He quit his high-pressure job and took a position teaching computer science at a community college. The salary was a tenth of what he used to make, but he found fulfillment in helping students who reminded him of Becca, brilliant but overlooked. 3 weeks after Becca moved into her apartment, Marcus asked her on a date. "A first date," he clarified. "Like we're starting over." Becca hesitated but finally agreed. "1 coffee, 30 minutes. If I hate it, you never have to see me again." They met at the same bookstore cafe where they first met. Marcus brought sunflowers. They talked for 4 hours, not 30 minutes. This time, Marcus asked about her recovery, her dreams, her fears. He listened, really listened. He took notes on his phone. When Becca noticed, she asked, "What are you doing?" "Writing down everything you say so I don't forget. So I never forget again." 3 months later, Becca had a panic attack at the hospital, triggered by surgery-related PTSD. She called Marcus without thinking. He was there in 15 minutes. He held her through it. Didn't say it's okay, because it wasn't, just said, "I'm here. Breathe with me." Afterwards, Becca said quietly, "Marcus, I think I'm ready to try again. Really try." But she set strict conditions. "I'm not the same person who begged for your attention. I have boundaries now. I have needs, and I'll voice them. If you ever block me, ignore me, choose work over me again, I'm gone. Forever. No second chances after this second chance. I understand, Marcus said. And I promise I see you. I finally see you. They started couples therapy. It was hard. They addressed years of resentment, pain, and broken trust. But slowly they began to rebuild. Not the marriage they had, but something new, something better. 6 months into their reconciliation, Marcus got a job offer. Senior VP position at his old company, double his teaching salary, but 70-hour weeks required. His old boss called him personally. You're too talented to waste teaching. Marcus called Becca immediately. Can we talk? I need your input on something. Over dinner, he explained the offer. Becca's face fell. Then Marcus said, I already said no. What? Becca was shocked. I said no before calling you, because I knew my answer. I don't care about the money. We have enough. And I have something worth more now. Becca started crying. Marcus panicked. What's wrong? Did I mess up? No, Becca said through tears. You passed. I didn't think you would, but you passed. She handed him a piece of paper. It was the job offer. His old boss had sent it to her first, asking her to convince Marcus to take it. It was a test arranged with their therapist. Marcus looked at her, not angry, just understanding. You had to know I'd choose right even when you weren't watching. Yes, Becca admitted. And you did. 1 year after finding Becca in the hospital, Marcus took her to the parking lot of St. Catherine's. This is where I learned to wait, to be patient, to put someone else first, he said. He pulled out a small box. Becca gasped. I'm not asking you to marry me. We're already married. I'm asking if you'll let me recommit, if you'll give me the honor of being your husband for real this time. The box held a new wedding ring, yellow gold with sunflower engravings. Becca looked at the ring, then at him. Marcus, I need to tell you something first. I've been keeping something from you. Marcus's heart sank. I forgave you. Months ago. I forgave you and didn't tell you because I was scared that if I did, you'd stop trying, that you'd go back to who you were. But you didn't. Every day you showed up. Every day you chose us. So yes, I'll let you recommit. Because you're not the man I married. You're better. And I love who you've become. 2 weeks later, they had a small ceremony with close family and friends. Sophie stood as Becca's maid of honor and said to Marcus, If you hurt her again, I'll end you. Marcus replied, I know. Thank you for protecting her when I didn't. When they exchanged new vows, Marcus promised to show up every single day, to see Becca, hear her, choose her. He promised she would never be invisible again. Becca promised to trust him with her heart again, to speak her truth even when it was hard, to never shrink herself for anyone. Instead of breaking glass, they planted a sunflower together in a pot with soil from Becca's grandmother's old restaurant. Every year, we'll plant a new one, Marcus said, to remind us that growth requires attention, water, and light, just like marriage. 2 years later, they lived in a small house with a yellow front door. Becca had chosen every detail. She went back to nursing, working part-time at the children's hospital. Marcus continued teaching, mentoring underprivileged students. When Becca got pregnant, they were both terrified and overjoyed. It was a high-risk pregnancy because of her surgery history, but Marcus went to every single appointment. He took family leave. He learned every medical term. When Becca said, You don't have to come to every appointment, Marcus replied, I want to. I'm choosing to. Their daughter, Rosa Maria Chen, was born healthy at 6:47 a.m., the same time Becca's surgery had been scheduled 2 years earlier. They called her Sunny because of the sunflowers. 3 months after Sunny was born, Marcus was working from home while Becca slept on the couch, exhausted. The baby started crying. Marcus picked her up and walked her around the room, singing the lullaby Becca used to hum. Hush now, baby. Don't you cry. Sunny stopped crying and looked at him with wide eyes. Marcus looked at his sleeping wife, at his daughter in his arms, at the small house with its yellow door and sunflower garden. He thought about the empty mansion he used to live in, the corner office he used to have, the promotions and achievements he used to chase. And he realized he didn't miss any of it, because he finally understood what his mother had tried to tell him years ago. You can have a life or you can have a good life. And the difference is love. 5 years later, Marcus stood in his backyard at a family barbecue. He was flipping burgers, present, not on his phone. Becca was laughing with friends. Sunny was playing with her cousins. Marcus's mother Patricia watched from a lawn chair and said, "You finally figured it out." "What's that, Mom?" "Success isn't what you build. It's who you build it with." Marcus looked at his family, his real family, the one he almost lost, the one he fought to keep. And he thought about all the people out there making the same mistakes he made. Choosing work over presence, achievement over connection, success over love. He thought about writing this story down, sharing it, hoping it would reach someone before they made his mistakes. Because the work will always be there tomorrow. But the people you love might not be. Marcus learned that lesson the hardest way possible. He learned it by losing everything and almost losing the one thing that actually mattered. He learned it by coming home to an empty house and a scratched-out wedding photo. He learned it by reading a letter from a wife who had been trying to tell him she might die. He learned it by sitting in a hospital waiting room, praying for one more chance. And when he got that chance, when Becca's eyes opened after surgery and she whispered his name, Marcus made a promise to himself. He would never take another day for granted. He would never assume tomorrow was guaranteed. He would choose love every single day in every small moment, because that's what love actually is. Not grand gestures or expensive gifts. Just showing up. Just being present. Just seeing the person in front of you and choosing them over everything else. If you're watching this story and you're ignoring someone who loves you, if you're choosing work over presence, achievement over connection, if you're blocking out the one person trying to reach you, don't wait. Don't wait for them to disappear. Don't wait for a crisis. Don't wait for a letter. Choose them now, while you still can. Because Marcus learned the hardest truth of all. The best time to choose your people was yesterday. The second best time is now. Thanks for watching this story. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed creating it. Like, share, and comment on the lessons you've learned. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. And if this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, it's never too late to change. It's never too late to see the people you love. It's never too late to choose presence over productivity. But don't wait until your house is empty and your wedding photo is scratched out. Don't wait until the person you love is on an operating table. Choose them today. Choose them now. Choose them every single day. Because that's what love is. And love is the only thing that actually matters. See you in the next one.